This week, a state of public emergency to fight crime was declared in some parts of Jamaica. This video is mainly designed for tourists and Jamaican diaspora planning a trip and wondering, is it safe to go to Jamaica during a state of emergency? The short answer is yes, and not only that, it's actually safer during this time, and you will later see why. This video might also be helpful for the locals to understand what state of emergency to fight crime actually is and why it is being declared. If you think that's because the crime is rising and some areas are unsafe, well, crime is actually lower now than it used to be in, say, 2017 or 2005, when homicides were 10% higher than today. Yet, there was no state of public emergency declared. So what's going on? Let's have a look. This video is sponsored by you. Thank you so much for the support. My name is Irina. I've been living in Jamaica for almost 9 years, and I can confirm that it is safe to travel all across the island during any time of the year, and most trips I did as a solo female traveler, a foreigner. But if you are really concerned about what you hear about crime in Jamaica and you want to visit Jamaica during the safest time possible, then you need to travel during the so-called state of emergency. And this is because of what the state of emergency actually is in Jamaica and how it works. First, the definition of a state of emergency. It's a situation of national danger or disaster in which a government suspends normal constitutional procedures in order to regain control or act faster. In other words, when it comes to crime in Jamaica, the declared state of emergency is not there to warn you that this area is dangerous. It is done to allow the government to arrest anybody as a suspect without having to go through the long bureaucracy, gaining permissions, and by the time the suspect might already be gone. So the state of emergency is not about danger or safety or concern for crime. It is actually a concern for human rights, because it's about how much power the government gains over its citizens to deal with crime or whatever the other issue. The constitutional procedures are there for a reason, so that Jamaican residents like you and I walking in the streets, not doing anything illegal, have the rights that are being protected by law. The police cannot just come and arrest us for no reason. They need a warrant. And there must be reasons why this warrant is granted in the first place. But during the state of emergency, they don't need anything. They can arrest just any resident who they think is a suspect and detain this person up to 7 days. Theoretically, in practice, it can happen for longer. They can also come and search your house if they think you might have something illegal. Under normal circumstances, the police cannot do things like that, but under the state of emergency, they can. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll talk later in this video. But first, if you are a tourist, how any of this is relevant to you? And the answer is, it isn't. You don't hide any illegal stuff in property in Jamaica. And even if the police stops you in the street, they will see your documents, you're not a resident, so you're good to go. But isn't it dangerous? What about shootings in the area? Aren't they increasing? And of course, it's the other way around. As soon as the state of emergency to fight crime is imposed, the chance of shootings or any criminal activity in the area drops down significantly, because people who are indeed involved in crime get arrested or go into hiding so they won't get arrested. So the only real effect a state of emergency might have on your stay as a visitor on the island, apart from making it safer, is traffic because of checkpoints. This is what it looks like. The area that is declared as the state of emergency has temporary block posts on the road. Each of them have some members of the police or military force looking for suspicious vehicles and individuals with a goal to find those involved in criminal activities. If you're not involved in any of these and you don't look like any of the suspects, they will just wave at you, to pass by.
morning. Morning.
That's it. That's what the state of emergency in Jamaica actually means for the tourists visiting the island. It means slightly more time in traffic. For the locals, on the other hand, the effect of state of emergency is way more significant and raises a very important question: whether it's an efficient way to fight crime. If it is, why didn't we have this done before when the crime was much higher than today? And if it isn't, why does Jamaica keep having these declared? To understand the answers to all of these questions, let's look at the concept of state of emergency itself in the global context. The need to declare a state of emergency may arise from all sorts of situations, everything from natural disasters to armed conflict. Here's a list of most common reasons. And here is an interesting observation that crime is not usually one of them. Now, the state of emergency can be declared for the whole country or for a small area that is being affected. The reason I'm showing this because it's important to understand the context of when other countries declare state of emergency due to the associations we, the average people, have when we hear a state of emergency. The concept itself is nothing new. In fact, the first recorded case of state of emergency comes from as far back as 5th century BC. It was declared in Roman Republic, and at that time it was known as justitium, meaning justice. A few recent examples. In 2020, the state of emergency was declared in many countries due to COVID-19 pandemic. More commonly, though, it is declared in response to protests.
That's when the real fight starts.
In 2022, we saw that in Canada, Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, Ecuador, and Uzbekistan, while the United States had it in some areas in 2020 due to George Floyd's protests, and in 2021 because of storming of the US Capitol. But probably the most appropriate time to declare a state of emergency is during natural disasters. Like this year, it was declared in Turkey due to massive earthquakes. War is another strong reason to declare a state of emergency, like it is in Ukraine because of the Russian invasion that led to hundreds of thousands dying and millions displaced. But now back to Jamaica. Why is it called a state of emergency? A more proper name for it would be something like a state of enhanced security. Obviously, the terminology comes from the way the law is written. But there is no war, no protests, no natural disasters, no major strikes, no civil unrest. Actually, nothing that would usually qualify for the reason to declare a state of emergency, as the concept is usually used. Yet, at the time of recording this video, just a few days ago, March 2023, Jamaican officials declared a state of emergency in Clarendon and St. James parishes. And not only that, the current government has been doing it every single year since 2018. So in the recent 6 years, including 2023, we had a state of emergency 6 times. Actually more, because it's declared several times a year in different areas. And the reason is stated to fight violent crime, even though crime is not usually a reason to declare a state of emergency. Basically, the message that people are getting from the government is that the crime is rising so high and so fast that it reaches the level of a disaster, and a state of emergency is absolutely necessary to save people's lives. On top of that, the way Jamaican media delivers this information to the public gives the impression that the number of homicides in Jamaica keeps on rising every single year. The problem with all this information is that statistically, it's not true. The thing to remember is that when people talk about crime in Jamaica, they don't actually mean crime. They mean one specific type of crime, which is homicides. If you look at all the other types of crime in Jamaica, assault, robbery, rape, carjacking, and so on, these are pretty low, especially compared to some other countries like the United States. But the statistics for this type of crime is not really reliable because these crimes always get underreported in every country, not just in Jamaica. So we cannot possibly know if in Jamaica people just report these crimes even less than in other places, or there is just a relatively low rate for these crimes because there are less cases. The statistics for homicides, on the other hand, is rather accurate because there is evidence, the victim. So here's the data from the official source. In 2022, we had 287 people killed by this time, and in 2023, it's 233. So the homicides decreased by 19% if you compare to the same period in 2022. If we look at the number of shootings, again, you see that they dropped by 14%. If you compare to persons injured, again, decreased, robbery decreased, break-ins decreased, and in total, crime decreased by 23%. Now, if we look at the last 20 years, there were quite a few peaks in the number of homicides. As you can see, all these years had up to 200 more homicides per year than we have today. But the state of emergency, because of significant rise in crime, was not declared. In fact, from the times of Jamaican independence in 1962 and before 2018, that is the period of 56 years, the state of emergency in Jamaica was declared only 5 times. Twice because of natural disasters, Hurricane Ivan in 2004 and Hurricane Dean in 2007. Twice because of the protests and political violence, this is the civil unrest, including 1 month in 1966 and the longest state of emergency, which lasted for 1 year from June 1976 to June 77. And only once during those years the state of emergency was declared because of crime in 2010, when it was a specific operation with attempts to arrest Christopher Dudas Coke on an extradition warrant. However, starting from January 2018, Jamaican government has been declaring a state of emergency on regular basis. So in the last 6 years, including 2023, we had state of emergency more times than in the previous 56 years. This, of course, raises a debate as to why this is happening and whether state of emergency is an effective way to fight crime. Here's a thing that most Jamaicans know, but people outside of Jamaica might find surprising. You see, the crime rate, that statistical data for Jamaica, is not just about crime here. It's also about politics. In terms of if the crime rate is low, or rather there are less homicides per year, then the government is good. If the crime rate is high, then the government is bad. So there is this straight correlation attached to crime rate and the work of the government in Jamaican public discourse. This actually makes zero sense because the work of the government of any country cannot be evaluated by the number of homicides. But it goes to the point that people don't even look at the improvements in infrastructure, the foreign affairs, the reduction of the national debt, the growth in purchasing power, or the economics, which is one of the key factors that influences reasons why crime exists in the first place. But no, all we need to know is less people killed, we shall vote for this political party, more people killed, we're gonna vote for the other political party. The politicians know that as well. And they know that they cannot possibly win any elections in Jamaica unless they give the public what they want, and that is the reduction in crime. Important, not just the promises, but the actual data, facts. So There are two main political parties in Jamaica. Whichever one is holding the office, they will do everything possible to show you that they are fighting the crime and that the crime is reducing during their office time. Whereas the goal of a political party in opposition is to prove that whatever the current party in power is doing related to fighting crime is wrong and is not going to work. So this is a short answer why there is a state of emergency in Jamaica announced on regular basis. The long answer, the current political party in power is JLP, and they found a way to show the results of fighting crime. See for yourself. In 2017, we had 1,647 homicides. Then, in January 2018, the state of emergency was introduced, and by the end of that year, the number of homicides reduced by 22%. So, it works. But if it does, why do we have an increase in crime as soon as the state of emergency is removed? And this is because of how it works. The general criticism of this way to fight crime is what I've mentioned earlier. When the state of emergency is announced, some people involved in criminal activities simply go into hiding or use back roads or no roads to relocate to a different parish where there is no state of emergency and then simply wait until it's all over, only to come out and commit the crimes again. Sure, some suspects who are indeed involved in criminal activities are arrested during the state of emergency. But what about the people who are not involved in any crime but just happen to look like a suspect or act in a way that is perceived as suspicious by a police officer? For instance, in September 2020, Jamaica's Supreme Court ruled that the detention of 5 young men during the state of emergency in summer 2019 was unconstitutional. The human rights group Jamaicans for Justice called it a historic victory for Jamaican human rights. But the government appealed to the ruling, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that the case is still being viewed in the Court of Appeal. Just imagine, these people were arrested and detained for over a year without any reasonable grounds or credible evidence. And this can happen to any one of us. The difference is, of course, that if it happens to someone like me, I know my rights and I have this platform and I will try to reach out to people and ask for help. But what about those who are mistakenly detained during the state of emergency and who cannot stand for their rights? So the main question here, is the price people are paying worth the results we're getting from the state of emergency? I don't know the answer, but what I do know is that even if state of emergency works well, it is still a short-term, temporary solution. The main job of the police force is to react to crime that has already been committed, while the only way to really reduce crime is, of course, to prevent it from happening in the first place, which is not the job of the police. It's the job of criminologists, sociologists, psychologists, teachers, and other scientists that have to develop a strategy of how to build a society where there is no reason to turn to crime. Now, everything I've said before was not my opinion. It's just information based on the research I've done for this video. And I hope it helps you to understand the state of emergency situation in Jamaica a little better. For more information, please check the sources I'll link in the description. But at the end of the video, I would also like to share my opinion. I think Jamaicans are the victims of their own stereotypes. And this is also one of the reasons crime persists. You see, outside of Jamaica, like in today's mainland Europe, people perceive Jamaicans as all about love and peace and beauty. Jamaicans have this lovely accent. The music is so fun or chill or inspiring. People just love the vibes, and that's why they love coming to Jamaica, because all these things are true. But there is a very different local narrative among Jamaicans themselves that Jamaica has this violent culture. Language is violent, music is violent, people them wicked, as if there is something wrong with Jamaicans and the change of mentality is needed. Guys, what mentality? Some of the most violent people in history were the Vikings. Now look at the Swedish people today. It's not the mentality, it's education and the standard of living. So we don't lose the educated people who go to build the economies of other countries instead. We need them here in Jamaica. And this is one of the reasons what this channel is for. To share the information with you and give a little different perspective than what people tend to hear in the local media. So if you find my work interesting, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss other videos when they come out. Thank you so much for watching, and the special thanks are always to our patrons for their continued support. They're the ones who allow me to contribute my time to creating these videos. If you also wish to join them and add your contribution to our YouTube project financially, you can do so from only $5 per month. My name is Irina, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.